panel of experts today. First we have Joni Peeny-Fitzsimmons. She's a marine biologist, PhD researcher and a LASMO co-founder. Next we have Mike Scotland. Mike is a marine biologist, dive instructor and underwater photojournalist. And we have Sarah Jo Loban on the end. So Sarah Jo is a marine conservation educator. And we have Nicola Bynan. She's head of campaigns at the Humane Society Australia. My name's Lisa Mondi, and it's my honour to host the panel today. So a lot of us have different impressions or understanding of sharks, but there's one thing most of us have in common, and that's a curiosity to know more about them. So learning more about sharks, their behaviour, movements and motivations is a key factor that can help keep us safer when we share their space. This really interests me because I actually survived a shark attack. So I was wakeboarding behind a boat when about a 4-metre great white shark came straight up from underneath and launched out of the water with my whole head and arm inside its mouth. So needless to say, I'm extremely lucky to still be alive and be here today and still have my arm attached. So yeah, it's definitely lacking a lot of function, but I'm so glad to still be here and have it attached. So ultimately, such a scary day did lead me to be more hungry for information about sharks and ultimately lead me to speak for their protection and see their importance in our oceans. So sharks are really important to ocean health. They are upper-level predators, which means they have a strong influence on prey numbers and the environments in which they live. Essentially, they have a stabilising effect on marine ecosystems. This means that if they are removed, there can be huge implications. Interestingly, sharks are also significant to humans in different ways. So shark antibodies are being studied as a way of treating macular degeneration and even cancer. We're looking at sharks' healing abilities to help heart function in the elderly and regeneration properties in amputees. We're also learning how to better survive hypoxia, or oxygen starvation, following a heart attack or a stroke. And of course, over the years, sharks' anatomy has inspired plane and boat designs, as well as swimwear inspired by their denticles or skin, which is sort of shaped like little teeth. So elasmobranchs, sharks and rays, are currently being threatened by a huge number of factors, most of which are the direct result of human activity. Recent research indicates that 1/4 of all elasmobranchs are threatened with extinction. Recognising that sharks pose little threat to humans and celebrating what makes them such awesome predators is a realisation that is pivotal in opening minds and hearts to protect these vital species, because it is hard to care about something that we don't understand or love. Very rarely a shark bites a human. In fact, you're 75 times more likely to be struck by lightning than be attacked by a shark. Let's put that fear into perspective a little bit. So in Australia last year, 291 people drowned, whereas only one person lost their life to a shark. Australia's deadly animal, in fact, is a horse. And there is a much higher chance of losing your life to a cow, dog, bee, or even a kangaroo than a shark. But interestingly, we don't react to these animals with that same fear. Something that is scary though, is killing animals for no reason at all, under the misunderstanding that it will make us safer in the water. Shark nets and drumlines indiscriminately kill marine life, with the minority of these animals being the targeted species. So did you know that shark nets are actually designed to reduce shark numbers, not as a barrier? They are installed under the theory that less sharks means less attacks. But in fact, an analysis of over 50 years of data about shark mitigation programs and coastal populations in New South Wales, Australia and South Africa showed that there are no relationship between the number of sharks and the number of shark attacks. This means that the nets actually do nothing to reduce our chance of a shark attack. So the more we learn about sharks and how they interact with their environment, the safer we can be. Coupled with personal shark deterrence, this is the way forward. Our oceans need sharks, and that means we do too. So we shouldn't fear the fin, we should fear a world without them. So without further ado, let's hear some super interesting information from our awesome panel today. After each speaker, we'll be highly encouraging questions and conversations about their topics. And the final part of our forum today will be discussions and further questions. So we'd really love you guys to get involved. Anything you've ever wanted to know about sharks, hopefully we can find some answers today with these awesome people. So first up, we have Joni Peeny-Fitzsimmons. So Joni is a marine biologist and PhD researcher at the Department of Biological Sciences at Macquarie University. She has almost a decade of experience studying sharks and rays and uses her knowledge to educate public, dispel myths and help with the terrible PR problem that these ocean predators suffer from. So please welcome Joni.
Thanks everyone. Thank you so much for coming along to talk everything sharks. It's one of my favourite topics, so hopefully you guys find it interesting as well. So, as Lisa said, I'm a marine biologist. I've been studying sharks for the better part of about a decade, and rays as well. My research is mostly focused on understanding these elusive predators, both sharks and rays, and understanding their position in our ecosystems and trying to give that information to the general public as well. So my current work is actually looking at stingrays, which are essentially the flattened cousins of sharks. So yeah, they're essentially the flattened cousins of sharks, so they're very similar in a lot of their biology and ecology. And the species that I'm studying at the moment is the smooth stingray, which is the largest species of marine stingray in the world. They get to up to 4 metres long, 2.5 metres wide, and up to 300 kilos. But I have also studied sharks as well. So when I first started my research, I actually studied Port Jackson sharks, which are these very, very unassuming little benthic sharks. And they're about as far as you can get from Jaws. But they're sort of a testament to just how diverse sharks really are. And, you know, not all sharks are made entirely of teeth and nightmares. You can find these cute little guys pretty much everywhere. And yeah, I mean, they don't have an aggressive bone in their body really. So the thing with sharks, despite being so diverse, a lot of them have some particular traits which make them more susceptible to threats. So take the great white shark for example. A lot of sharks are very slow growing and they're really late to reach sexual maturity, so they don't breed until they're quite old. So great white sharks, they're estimated to live for up to 70 years and they don't have their first litter potentially until they're 30 years old. Another quite extreme example is the Greenland shark, which has recently been estimated as potentially living to 300 to 500 years of age. And that means that there are potentially Greenland sharks alive at the moment, which were alive when Sir Isaac Newton was still figuring out gravity. So that's pretty extreme. And these guys potentially don't have their first litter until they're about 150 years old. So it can be quite extreme. Another trait that some of these species have in common that makes them more susceptible is a lot of species have quite, they produce very few really well-developed young. So it takes quite a lot of time and energy to produce these pups, and that means that there can be quite a big gap between litters. So the grey nose shark, for example, they don't breed every year, they breed every 2 to 3 years, and when they do, they only have 1 to 2 pups. And this is because of something called interuterine cannibalism. Essentially, the first pup to develop eats all the other ones before they're born. So only the fittest one survives, essentially, so they're only having 1 to 2 pups every 2 to 3 years. So when they're threatened, when their population declines, it means that they don't recover as quickly as we need them to be able to, you know, keep surviving, essentially. So, there we go. So these traits, as I said, make them particularly susceptible to threats, so population declines. And there's 4 key threats that I just want to touch on briefly today, which I think the rest of the panel are going to touch on a bit as well for you. The first is fishing. Fishing for them directly for their meat and fins is a huge issue for population decline, as well as getting caught incidentally as bycatch. So in other fisheries where they're not the target species, they're getting caught up in these nets as well. Another threat is coastal development, so coastal communities building on areas that are critical habitats potentially, as well as, you know, just human activity impacting on these areas, which could be feeding grounds, pupping grounds, sites that are essential for their survival. Also, climate change has made a lot of areas uninhabitable for a lot of these species as well, and we're seeing lots of range shifts. They're moving either further towards the poles or just out of areas completely, which might again be these critical habitats that they need for their survival. And they also, as Lisa said, suffer from a really bad PR problem, and a lot of people just don't think that they're worth saving. A lot of people don't understand their importance in our ecosystems, and that's something that's that I try to work on a lot is trying to change people's idea of these animals, and that they're not all terrifying, they're not going to kill you, they're not going to hunt you down, they're just living their life in the ocean, which, you know, we want to enjoy the ocean as well, but, you know, it's their home. So the importance of sharks in our ecosystems, they're incredibly important as top predators. This means that they basically control everything below them in the food chain. So there was a study that came out, I think it was in 2013, where researchers are looking at the effects of the removal of sharks from reefs in West Timor. Essentially, they could show that the removal of these sharks through fishing pressures was actually causing, in the long term, was causing all the corals and reefs to die. So essentially what happens is the sharks and rays and the top predators, they control the next level of animals, so the mid-level animals. If you take these predators out of the equation, then these mid-level animals can flourish, and they in turn eat a lot more of the food that they eat, which is our primary producers. And our primary producers are essentially what keep us alive. So if we move the predators, these ecosystems can crash, and we can lose all these primary producers, third time thinking, and they actually produce 70% of the oxygen that we breathe. So that's more than half of the air that we breathe comes from our oceans. So it's really important to keep these top predators in place to help keep these ecosystems in balance. So that's pretty much it for me. Did anyone have any questions about any of that? Maybe I just explained it really well. You'll get it. Alright, well, yeah, there'll be more time for questions afterwards, so I'll pass on to Mike now. Oh, you're going next.
Sorry guys, we're just working out whose slides are next. Okay, so up next, we have Sarah Jo Loebwin. So armed with degrees and backgrounds in marine science and secondary science education, Sarah Jo is a passionate marine science and conservation educator involved in multiple projects at any one time. These include plastic-free Sutherland Shire, freelancing as ocean tidings in marine science outreach and journalism, including contributor to Ocean Geographic online and print publications, and instigating several community and social media initiatives such as #SwapForTheSea, #RejectedASingle, #PickedUpASingle, and #SoShire. What's that SoShire one?
It's like So Manly, Sustainable Organisations of Sutherland Shire. So if you've heard of So Manly, we now have So Shire. So basically it's all the environmental groups in Sutherland Shire getting together to support certain causes. So our first initiative is getting single-use plastics out of our local businesses, so our cafes, our restaurants, and then maybe moving on to our corporate businesses in our area and just helping with their waste problem.
Okay, great. So Sarah Jo encourages ocean conservation, reducing plastic marine pollution, and the awareness of alternatives or simple swaps to single-use plastic consumption in our everyday lives to stop our seas drowning in plastic. How good is that? So please give Sarah Jo a warm welcome.
Hello, thank you for coming. Just a little bit of background. So I started off as a marine scientist and was really interested in seahorses, and then over the time the marine debris problem was just basically forced in my face because there's a scuba diver and traveller, so my life ended up in that direction, educating about single-use plastics and debris. And I think the best way to start off talking about pollution with sharks is this first video that some of you may have already seen.
So I've got this baby tiger shark that was wrapped up in the rope, and it's got plastic bags and its stomach. Look at that. How's the ocean supposed to survive? And there's more of them. Look. All this plastic in one shark's stomach. Look at that. No wonder the poor little bug was so green, skinny, and a real healthy environment.
So
So I probably should have given you a graphic warning on that. There's no little toddlers around. There's all adults and babies, so hopefully nobody was too affected by that. So that's a really good video. We won't go into why he was fishing sharks. So he doesn't normally fish tiger sharks, but this is from a fisherman down the coast who actually fishes bronze whalers. But this is a very good example of a problem that's been around long before I was born, but it's now in our face. So we can't hide from it anymore. It is affecting our top predators, but it's also affecting the fish and the other organisms that these top predators eat, which we also eat. So this is a very good video to kind of show you that the problem now is got to a point we have to do something about it. We do have to make our own individual choices about the plastic we use, because even if we think it goes to landfill, it does, most of it end up in the oceans, unfortunately. And it's not just the only type of plastic pollution, but I just thought I'd touch base on the plastic pollution first because it's on trend at the moment, it's finally in the news. So I use these memes basically to kind of sum up, you know, an idea what's happening. So a lot of people are very scared of sharks for no reason, as the panel will talk about, has talked about, right? We're not actually their food. They are a very big predator, an important predator of the oceans. They keep the oceans healthy. But unfortunately now, the biggest predator of the oceans is actually humans, not only because of how we kill the sharks, but also how we're polluting the oceans. And on the flip side, it's also a very good metaphor to show how we're actually the scariest thing, because it's actually going to affect ourselves. If we're polluting healthy oceans, all right, we need the oceans for ourselves, for our food and for our own enjoyment. And even if we don't realise, even if we don't eat seafood, it is the basis of a food chain. So if we're polluting that, the phytoplankton, etc., we're affecting our oxygen content, we're affecting all our basic food chains. So the fact that we are polluting the oceans is now coming to bite us, if you excuse the pun. There's a play on the Jaws movies by Steven Spielberg, where the shark was attacking the human. Here we have obviously the plastic bag attacking the shark, as you saw in the video, and obviously our mountains of trash. And some people, there might be some questions you might want to ask at the end, but people always talk about, well, I put my trash in the bin.